Today we are going to make this crystal bracelet here to go with the crystal weave necklace and earrings that I made in the previous two tutorials. Back off a little so you can see the crystal. And so this is the bracelet we're going to make in this tutorial. And it is quite pretty. It's a lot like the crystal right angle weave bracelet that I made a few weeks ago. However, in this particular bracelet, we are joining through the 11/0 seed bead instead of through the crystal. It gives it a different arrangement and a different look. So that is why I've made this set in particular, so you can see as you change up your right angle weave going through different beads, it's the same stitch, but you can get different looks using different sizes of beads and using different positioning, like going through the 11/0 instead of the crystal. I'll go ahead and put this on my wrist and we'll take a look at it and then we'll get started. And this is what the bracelet looks like on the wrist. It's really very pretty. Of course, it didn't look so great with my sweatshirt, but it is a very pretty little bracelet. And let's go ahead and look and see what we need as far as materials go to make this project. Okay, for this video, you will need a toggle clasp. I'm using a heart-shaped toggle clasp, hematite tone, and this will match the toggle that I used in my necklace. 6mm bicone crystals. This is a Swarovski 6mm bicone, or zillion, same thing. 2 4mm bicone crystals. This is also a Swarovski clear. Then you'll need 11/0 and 15/0 seed beads. You will also need a beading needle. I am using a size 10 English beading needle. You will, of course, need thread. I am using 8-pound Nanofil. You can also use 10-pound Nanofil or 6 or 8-pound Fireline. That will all work just fine. You'll start the project by measuring about 1.5 yards of thread and go ahead and thread your beading needle and we'll get started. Okay, to start this project, we will begin by picking up a 6mm bicone crystal, an 11/0 seed bead, a 6mm bicone crystal, an 11/0 seed bead, a 6mm bicone crystal, an 11/0 seed bead, a 6mm bicone crystal, and an 11/0 seed bead. So what you will have on your needle will be 4 6mm bicone crystals and 4 11/0 seed beads. Start by picking up a 6mm bicone and end with an 11/0 seed bead. We're going to bring these to the end of the thread. You don't have to leave a long tail, just enough to hold on to, and then you're going to come back through the first bicone you put on the tail side. So just bring your needle back through that first bicone, and I got the 11/0 too, which is fine, and just draw these up into a circle like this, and then sew back through the entire circle. So I'm just going to go through all the beads I just added. When I get back to where my tail thread and my working thread, the working thread is the one that the needle is on, the tail is the thread that's left over on the end after you put your beads on. So once you get to where they meet, right here, we're going to tie a little knot. So I'm just going to take my tail thread, my working thread, loop them around each other, bring the tail thread through the loop, and just tie a knot. And I'll do that again. It's just an overhand knot. So I'm just going to tie a couple knots, making sure that the knot slides down between the beads and not on top of them. And your end result should look something like this if I can hold on to it. There we go. Now I am going to sew through to the opposite 11/0 from which I'm exiting from. So I'm exiting from this 11/0, or I'm right here where I tied my knot. So I'm just going to sew over to the other side just to get away from my tail for the moment. Then we'll cut that tail off once we get this a little bit more secured. So I'm going to go all the way up, halfway around the unit. And here I am going to attach my clasp just so that it's there, it's ready, and we don't have to tie onto our tail and do that at the end. So what we're going to do is we're going to pick up two 15-0 seed beads, and then we'll pick up an 11-0 seed bead, a bicone crystal, and an 11-0 seed bead. So I've got two 15-0s, 11-0, 4mm bicone, 11-0. And I'm going to drop these down to my piece. I've got a lot of thread, guys, sorry. There we go. Now, I am going to set this down and pick up one end of my clasp, and I'm going to go through my clasp. And I'm going to drop this down like so. Now I'm just going to come back through the 11-0, the bicone crystal, and the 11-0. And I'm going to ignore the two 15-0s. I'm going to pick this up, I'm going to hold it tight between my fingers and pull my thread until my clasp lines up right on top of that 11-0 seed bead right there. And then I'm going to pick up two 15-0 seed beads. And I'm going to go through the 11-0 on the opposite side from which I started. Right in the 11-0 we're connecting to, right there. And pull. I'm going to lay this down and zoom you in so you can see what it looks like. That's what that should look like. Now we're going to go ahead and sew through this several times to secure the clasp. So I'm coming out of this side of the 11-0. I'm going to go up into the 15-0 seed beads here, up into the 11-0, the bicone crystal, the 11-0, and then I will also go through my clasp, like so, and pull. And then I will go around the clasp into the 11-0, and then the crystal, the 11-0 on the other side, and then the two 15-0s on the other side from which we started. Then I will go back through the 11-0 I'm connecting to. Now I am going to sew through this two more times just to make sure that my clasp is nice and secure, and then we will be back to start the bracelet stitch. Okay, so now that we have secured the clasp on, our next step will be I'm going to cut short my tail thread. I will leave a little bit of length and later I will burn it down. I also want to leave a little length in case of any slippage, which there really shouldn't be at this point, but it just makes me feel more secure. So now I'm coming out of this 11-0 seed bead. I'm going to work down to this 11-0 seed bead to start my next unit. We did a crystal right angle weave a couple weeks ago, and we did our weave through the crystals. In this weave, we're going to do it through the 11-0 seed beads that are between the crystals. It makes a different look, and it gives you an idea of what you can do with right angle weave. It doesn't always have to be the same. You can change it up by going through different beads in between. You can add different sizes and make it curve, all kinds of different stuff. So that's what I am trying to show you with this particular set. This is the stitch we did in the necklace. Now we're going to go down into, we're coming out of this side of the 11-0, we're going to go down into the bicone crystal, the 11-0 behind it, and then we'll go into the next bicone and the 11-0 on the bottom here. And we are going to start our next stitch from here. Each stitch will have the exact same amount of beads in it. However, we will be sharing one. In this case, we're sharing the 11-0. So instead of picking up 4 11-0s, we will only pick up 3. And we'll pick up 4 bicones. So we'll pick up a bicone, an 11-0, a bicone, an 11-0, a bicone, an 11-0, a bicone, and this is what you should have on your needle. Then we're coming out of this side of the 11-0 seed bead. We're going to go into the opposite side, and then we're going to pull the beads down. And we've got another unit, except for it's loose and wobbly. So I'm going to just turn it over so it's more accessible to my right hand, and I'm going to sew back through this entire unit. I'm coming out of the 11-0. I will go up through the bicone, the 11-0, and the next bicone, and pull. And then I will go through the 11-0 here, and then the bicone and the 11-0 here, and then I will go down into the bicone and the 11-0 I started in here. And then we need to sew back up to the 11-0 here so that we can do our next unit. So we'll just go up through the bicone and the 11-0, close to where our thread is coming out, come up into the next bicone and the next 11-0. And at this point, I will go ahead and burn my little tail down so that I don't forget to do it. So I'm just going to take a lighter, and where are you, little tail? There you are. And I'm just going to put the heat close to it and just melt it down into a little blob, and it'll tuck up between my beads, and then I don't have to worry about it anymore. Now I'm going to make my next unit on my bracelet here. So I'm going to pick up a bicone crystal, an 11-0 seed bead, a bicone crystal, an 11-0 seed bead, a bicone, an 11-0, a bicone, and my fourth 11-0 is on my unit already. So this is all I need. And I'm coming out of this side of the 11-0. I will go into the opposite side and pull my beads down into a unit. And then I will sew around the entire unit. To secure it. Once I get all the way to my connecting bead, I'll pull everything tight, make sure there's no slack in my thread, and then I'll sew down through the beads to the next 11-0 where I will start my next unit. It's easier if you turn it over so that it's accessible to your right hand, and then go ahead and sew all the way to the top 11-0. We'll do one more unit and then we'll discuss length of the bracelet. So let's pick up a bicone crystal, an 11-0 seed bead, a bicone crystal, an 11-0 seed bead, a bicone crystal, 11-0, and bicone, like so. And then go into the opposite side from which your thread is exiting and pull. And then again, sew all the way around all the beads you just put on. If you hold them between your thumb and your finger, you can get pretty good tension that won't slip. And then up through to the bead we're connecting to. And then down, get across to my thread. I did. Okay, I'm going to pull this out. I just want to show you what I just did. I just crossed my thread over my bead somehow. So if you do that, just take your needle off and pull your thread through. If you try to push it through with your needle, usually you'll just end up with a big knot. So just pull it through. I'm going to leave this in the video so that you can see how I corrected my issue. And then I will just thread my needle again now that I've pulled my thread out, and I'll stitch through it properly. I think my thread just crossed itself is what happened. So now I will go into the 11-0 seed bead here and pull tight. Ah, there it is. There is the issue right there. There we go. Okay, so now I've corrected my little issue. This is going to happen a lot as you're sewing through projects. It happens to everybody. I don't care if you're advanced, if you're beginning, whatever. So you just have to keep looking at it until you can correct the issue. Do not sew past it, because you cannot, once you make your next unit, you can't correct it. So if you see an issue happening, attack that issue at that time. Otherwise, you'll have to take your whole piece apart in order to correct it later. Now we're going to sew all the way up to the top bead. Here. And this is where we will begin our next unit. Now let's look at length here. I want to make my bracelet to be about 7.5 inches. The way that I have made my clasping is rather extended. So if I make my bracelet 6 inches thinking that I'm going to have a 7-inch bracelet, I will be off. So my clasping is taking up, I'm going to show you on my bracelet, it's taking up, when you measure your toggle on the round side or the heart-shaped side in my case, you will want to measure halfway through the brown part of your toggle, because this part is going to lay halfway through it. So measure halfway through and then measure to your first unit. Do not consider just the clasp. Consider the entire connection of the clasp. So now I am, let's see, I'm about exactly an inch. So my other side is going to be exactly an inch too. So that's 2 inches of clasping. So if I want to make a 7.5 inch bracelet, I am going to have to make a 5.5 inch middle so that I can add those 2 inches on and have the accurate size. So I will make my units until I have 5.5 inches. Or I can measure, since I have my clasp on, I can measure it like so until I get an inch short of where I want to be. So if I want to be 7.5 inches, I'll go ahead and go to 6.5 inches, or right there, because of the fact that I've measured this side. So measure it either around your wrist or measure it on a ruler, keeping in mind how much length it's going to take to do both sides of your clasping. Otherwise, if you do the size in the main part of your bracelet that you want for your finished product, you're going to have a very big bracelet. If you make it too short in the middle, then it's going to be too small. So consider your measurements of your bracelet. I'm not telling you exactly how many units to make, because that doesn't work when everyone's using a different size clasp. Also, I want you to learn how to figure out how to make the length that you want on your own, so that no matter what pattern you're using, you can figure out how long you want to make your bracelet. Because bracelets notoriously are too long or too short when you're doing a stitch and you get done, you're like, oh no, it's too long or it's too short. So I still have that issue. So you want to think through it with your clasping as you make your bracelet. So go ahead and make to the length that you want, and we'll come back and put the other side of the bracelet on and finish our project. Okay, so I have made 7 units, and I'm counting the space in the middle of the units as my marker for counting. So the little hole right in the middle, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I have made 11, and I'm measuring, putting my toggle halfway through, and I am just a little bit short of 7 inches. By the time I add my clasping, I'll be a little over 7 inches, and that is perfect for me. So that is where I'm going to go ahead and stop and add my clasping. So now we are going to pick up, we're going to do exactly the same thing we did on the other side. We're going to pick up 2 15-0 seed beads, an 11-0 seed bead, and then our 4mm bicone crystal and 11O seed bead, and then the other side of the clasp. We're going to drop this down, go through the clasp, then we are going to go through the 11O and the bicone crystal and the 11O right here. Let's get closer so you can see what I'm doing. And then I'm going to hold on to these beads and pull my thread down until my clasp is on top of that 11O that's on top of the crystal. Then I'm going to pick up 2 more 15O seed beads, and I'm going to go through the opposite side of the bead from which I'm coming out of and connect it like so. Now I'm going to sew through, and I am going to secure my clasp. Then we'll come back and tie a knot and be done. I have sewn through my clasping a couple of times and secured it. You can sew through it as many times as you would like. Just make sure you retain enough thread to sew through and tie off your piece. So I have a few inches left. So what I'm going to do, I'm coming out of the 11O seed bead after securing my clasping. I'm going to go down into this 6mm bicone crystal. I'm going to then go into this 11O seed bead and the next 6mm bicone crystal, and then I'm going to go underneath the thread bridge between the two beads here. So right between the 11O and the crystal, and I'm going to pull this into a loop. And then I'm going to pull my needle through it, or push my needle through it, excuse me. I'm trying to give myself a little bit more room. Let's do that again. Go underneath this little thread bridge here, create a loop, and then bring your needle back through that loop and pull. And then sew through your piece a little bit more, and you can do that a couple of times. Wherever you are between beads and you want to tie a knot, just go ahead and tie a knot between beads and then sew a couple more beads away from it and do it again. Just making sure that your thread goes down between your beads and not on top of them like I just did. If you do that, you're going to have to back through and undo it like I just did. And then just make sure you don't pull it really tight until you know it's between the beads, because you will make mistakes. This is a very, very, very simple piece, and I have made several mistakes on it, and normally I can do much more complicated pieces and not make this many mistakes. So you never know when it's going to happen. So just pay attention to what you're doing, and before you tighten and move on, correct your issues. I'm going to go back through a couple more beads, and then I'm going to go ahead and cut my thread off, leaving a tiny bit of length. These are really dull scissors too. And I've got a little bit of length here, if you can see it. Hope I was in frame. Right here. And I'm just going to burn that down. If you notice, I don't light it on fire. Just get the heat real close until it crumples down into the piece. And then this is what my bracelet looks like. I'll go ahead and try it on. And a little bit more there. And that's what it looks like. Awfully cute. And I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and go ahead and make one. Let me show you what it looks like with the entire set. I'll be right back. Okay, and this is the entire set that we've just learned to make. And I think that would make a really pretty Christmas party necklace or a gift or something like that. And it's quite impressive looking. And I hope you've enjoyed learning to make these, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.